Okay, so the next book I'm going to review for you is The Blood of Heaven by Kent Wascom. This book was published in May of 2013 by Grove Press. It has 432 pages and it has 113 ratings on Goodreads. This book takes place in the US at the beginning of the 19th century. It follows Angel Woolsack. When you first see Angel Woolsack, he is around, I think, he doesn't know his age, so I think he's around maybe 10 or 12 or something like that. And he travels around with his father, proselytizing. His father's a preacher, and just trying to find a place where they can have a church. Because most of the time when they proselytize, they get kicked out of a lot of places. But eventually they find a place to start preaching, and then they meet another preacher. He's a deacon and he has two boys, so this is the Keplers. And first, Angel Woolsack, he hates the older one, but then eventually they become like brothers, and eventually telling other people that they're brothers. And Angel Woolsack, he is a very gifted speaker. He seemed to be a very promising preacher, but an event happens that causes him to leave home. Him and Simon Kepler leave together, and they try to go start proselytizing, and at the same time robbing people. It kind of goes through their travels all the way to Florida, where they try to lead an insurrection. This book is written in the language that they spoke at the time. It's written first person of Angel Woolsack. It has no quotation marks, but I think it's pretty easy to understand. It's not too difficult. I really did like the first half of this novel. It was very intriguing, trying to figure out what the environment that these people lived in, and also their justification for a lot of things. How they talked about natives and how they treated slaves, and also their justification for doing a lot of things that one would think are antithetical of Christianity, but they had no problem with these concepts, and it was very, very interesting. I think a few people are comparing this book to The Blood Meridian, and I do see the comparison in the fact that it is a period piece. It is talking about a specific piece of American history that was marked by violence and religion. It's part of history that, from a point of view that people don't typically talk about that much, or how brutal it was. You do feel for Sam, like you do feel Angel. Eventually, he calls himself Angel Kepler. You do feel for him and his regrets and his goals. But eventually, it gets to the part in the novel where it becomes more entwined with history, and I feel like it seemed like it's at a certain point in the book, it expected you to understand certain historical event, or, understand what was happening, instead of just having things unfold. At a certain point in this novel, it gets a little bit too wrapped up in historical figures. There are definitely historical figures that do pop up near the end, and it gets a little bit too political. It kind of seems like this narrative kind of backed away from the in-your-face reality of how these people lived, how they justified what they did, and just the brutality of that time period. It kind of started wrapping in more political dealings and political climate, and that ties into it. It would make more sense if you understood the history of it more in depth, but I personally didn't remember all of the history related to this. They talk about Andrew Jackson, and it kind of lost my interest at that point, because it felt like it was already expecting you to know a lot of these landmarkers in history to get it, or to understand what was going on. And I felt that in that sense, it it was less successful than, let's say, the Blood Meridian, because the Blood Meridian, it is based off of a historical gang, like scalping gang, but it didn't ask you to remember who the president was, or they totally described what they wanted you to understand about that world, instead of, hoping you connect the dots of, from your history lessons. I kind of felt like this was like half as good as Blood Meridian. I did enjoy like the first half of it, but near the end it kind of seemed like it fizzled out for me a bit. I gave it like 3 out of 5 stars. I would read something else from Kent Wascom, but I would like to see maybe a different time period, or maybe something that didn't rely so much on knowing your history and making those connections yourself instead of him doing it in the narrative. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. That's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Talk to you guys later. Bye.